So you think that you might be a system. What do you do about that? Hello everybody, we are Brigade of Beings, a diagnosed dissociative identity disorder system. My name is Penelope, and in this video, I'm going to be giving advice to suspected systems. So, collectively as a system, we have compiled 7 different tips that we wish we would have known before we started exploring the option of having a complex dissociative disorder. But before we get into those 7 points, there are some disclaimers that I have to say. The first is that there is never going to be an ideal time to work out that you have a complex dissociative disorder that is rooted in childhood trauma. There is never going to be a perfect time. It is almost always going to suck and be very, very hard and not be an easy journey. However, there are some things that might make it easier, and so that's kind of what this video is focusing on. And the second thing, the really big thing, this is not a diagnostic tool. We are not a mental health professional. We are not able to tell you in this video or in the comments or even in a conversation with you whether you have a dissociative disorder or are a system. We are not trying to tell you whether or not we think you are a system with this video. Instead, what we are providing is a list of things that we wish we would have known when we started exploring the option of being a system before our diagnosis. It is important to note as well that some systems will only ever become aware of their system after diagnosis. It needs to be pointed out to them by a medical professional who is competent in dissociation. Whereas for others, we are able to reflect on our experiences, use the knowledge that we have, and just become aware of the different parts that make us us in a way that is a lot more complex than normal part states. Both of those experiences are common. Both of those experiences are valid. This video isn't so much targeted towards people who've already gotten a diagnosis, although there might still be some benefit there, but specifically towards those who are starting to question whether or not they might have DID or OSDD and wondering whether or not they're alone in their own head. So with all of that said, let's get into these 7 different pieces of advice that we have for individuals exploring the idea that they might be a system. Point number 1, assess your safety. Safety is a very complex concept, and you are never going to be truly 100% safe. Even if you live in a bubble-wrapped house, there are still things that could potentially go wrong. So this isn't about ensuring that you are 100% safe. This is about ensuring that you are as safe as you possibly can to start this process. The first thing to consider is your living situation. Are you living with other people? Are you living alone? Are the people that you are living with, if you are living with people, accepting of mental health? Are you still living with people who pose a danger to yourself? All of these things are very important when you start to consider the pros and cons of exploring being a system, because sometimes it is more important that the system stays hidden and unacknowledged than for you to have that realization. If it is unsafe for you to know you are a system, it is best to just let it rest and try to build safety first and then go exploring this option. The second thing to assess when it comes to safety is, do you have access to professional care if your mental health declines to the point you are a risk to yourself? It is very, very common for individuals with dissociative identity disorder and otherwise specified dissociative disorder to experience suicidality, self-harm, and suicide attempts. And when you are starting to explore the option of maybe being a system, it is very common for these things to exacerbate as you are starting to tap into the system, and it might be some alter's only way of communicating, only way of preventing you becoming aware of the system, only way of protecting themselves. So it is vital that if you are going to explore this and you have a history of these behaviors, that you make sure that you have access to professional care. That doesn't necessarily have to be hospitalization or a psychologist. It could just be a reliable GP. It could be a reliable counselor. If you don't have access to professional help, do you have access to informal support like friends or family or a partner or anything like that who will be able to support you and keep you safe if you are no longer able to keep yourself safe? And worst case scenario, are you prepared to have to potentially be admitted to a public psychiatric hospital? And how will that financially impact you if you are not in a country where that is covered? I'm not going to sugarcoat this. DID can come with a lot of risks around system discovery, and whilst it can go smoothly and it can be fine, it is important that we acknowledge that there is risk and that you do everything in your power to decrease that risk as much as possible before stepping forward. The third point under safety is about your financial safety and security. What are your finances like? Are you currently working? If you have to take time off of work, are you financially stable enough to be able to support yourself? Are you on benefits? Are you unemployed and looking for work? What is your financial situation? Do you have enough savings in place to access professional care? Do you have enough savings if you need to take time off work? Do you have enough savings if you lose your job? What is your financial situation like? And that is a lot easier to say. You should have a good financial situation first. I know that's unrealistic. I understand that globally there is a cost of living crisis. I understand that right now finances are something that a lot of people are struggling with. And I'm not saying that you have to have perfect finances. I'm just saying that you need to take it into account. And the final thing is, do you feel a sense of safety around the concept of dissociative disorders? If every time you look into a dissociative disorder, or you look into trauma, or you look into your past, you are dissociating, you are having flashbacks, you are having self-harm episodes, you are having other behavior that is negatively impacting you, maybe you're engaging in eating disorder behavior, all of that kind of stuff, if that is coming up when you are researching dissociative disorders, it is probably because it is not safe for you to do so. That doesn't necessarily mean you do have a dissociative disorder. It just means that there is something about the topic that is destabilizing you, and that before you can approach it, you need to build coping skills and a sense of internal safety. And again, these things don't have to be 100% safe. You're never going to become 100% safe, but it is being aware that you are taking risks and being as prepared as possible to mitigate those risks and those negative things that come up when they occur. There is also the element that it might be safest for you to know you are a system. There might be people inside who are actively reaching out to you because you're in an unsafe situation, and because of how dissociation of memories are working, you're unaware, and they are trying to get you safe. So there are also times where it is vital for the system to become aware of itself, to become more open, to protect your safety. And if that is happening, if people are actively reaching out to you from inside, then this should be something that you would look into and still take into account the other points that we have in this video. But it should also be important to note that whilst realizing your system can destabilize you and can make you more unsafe, it can also be vital to ensuring collective safely. And it's very complex, and it's very much a case-by-case basis. The second piece of advice when it comes to assessing whether or not you might have a dissociative disorder or might be a system is to track your symptoms. I do not just mean starting to track symptoms of dissociative identity disorder. I mean to track anything that is out of the ordinary, anything that is causing you distress, anything that other people have reported to you that you do, anything that you do not think is typical. So this includes things like dissociation. This might include things like alters or parts. This might include depression or mania or eating disorder behavior, self-harm, suicidality, impulsiveness. It might include things like emotional numbness or very strong emotional changes, hyperactivity, sensory sensitivity, verbal shutdowns, lack of pain responses. Anything like that, you should start keeping track of. We use an app that's called Human. It has a purple logo. We'll put the logo on the screen somewhere for you to see, probably over here on my hand. And it is an app that allows you to track different diagnoses and symptoms, to journal about them, and to generate reports based on the information that you provided. It allows you to put in conditions and disorders that you've been diagnosed with, as well as disorders and conditions that you suspect that you have, as well as independently select different symptoms that you want to keep track of. It's not perfect, but it is very, very helpful. And you can plug in how often you want to track symptoms. You can also plug in treatments that you're doing, medication that you're taking, appointments that you have to attend, all of that sort of stuff. You can use other apps as well. You can use a notebook. You can keep track of it in your phone notes. Just some way to keep track of how often these things are occurring, how much distress it is causing you, how much it is impacting your life and other people's lives around you if it's also impacting them. If safe to do so, you can ask the people that you are around, who are close to you, if they have observed anything about your symptoms, and to ask them to also write supporting evidence, or to bring it to mind when they see you witnessing a symptom or experience that you're trying to track. However, with all of that said, tracking symptoms can become quite compulsive for some people, where they have to track every single little thing. Try not to fall into this trap. Again, it's something that's easier said than done, but it's important that whilst you're tracking symptoms and you are aware of what is going on, you are also still living your life. Just because you are out with friends and you suddenly notice yourself getting dissociated or depersonalized doesn't mean you have to whip out your phone and write it down. Yes, you might want to because you're experiencing issues with your memory, but also remember that you are allowed to be living your life and you don't have to capture every single little symptom if it's then going to negatively impact you in participating with the world outside. There will be different levels of balance for tracking symptoms and living life for different people. For us, we find tracking our symptoms in the evening the most helpful, and then writing down anything that's glaringly important throughout the day. But realistically, we will go weeks to months at a time where we forget to track anything. And at this point in time, that's really okay for us. We have our diagnosis, we have supports, we have our psychologist and our OT, so we don't really need to be tracking symptoms anymore. But if you are someone who is just at the beginning of your journey, trying to keep a regular report is good. Some advice actually that our OT gave us recently is to only track symptoms for a limited amount of time. So instead of trying to consistently track your symptoms from the period of you starting to track to when you see somebody, just track for 2 weeks. Just track everything in that 2-week period and then stop and take a break. And then if anything else big comes up, add to it, but use that as your data set. And that is just one way that you can do it. Do however it works for you. But just keep track of them so that you have something to fall back on, because with dissociative disorders, with being a system, memory issues are a big thing, and so it's important to have it written down. Or maybe not written down, maybe you're leaving video journals, maybe you're talking to other people and they're keeping record for it. However you are keeping track. And our third piece of advice, the reason for number 2, is to seek a professional opinion. This isn't as easy as it should be. Accessing adequate mental health care is very, very difficult, but it should be something that you are considering. Having a complex dissociative disorder is not something that anybody should have to deal with alone, and accessing professional help that is adequate and comprehensive can be vital in helping somebody reach their personal healing goals. It is not something you should have to manage alone, because that is very, very, very hard to do so. Before seeking out a professional, there are many, 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 many different things to consider, and I recommend sitting down with a big piece of paper and just brainstorming anything. But here are some different points to consider. What are you looking for from your mental health professional? Are you looking for someone to give you a diagnosis? Are you looking for somebody who practices a specific modality? Are you looking for someone who can help with medication? Are you looking for someone who can help you avoid crisis and crisis stabilization? Are you looking for someone to help you build skills? Are you looking for somebody who is going to be sort of a mentor figure? Anything like that. What is it that you are specifically looking for? Are you looking for multiple things? And will you need multiple professionals to help fill those different areas? Different types of professionals that you might consider seeing are a peer support group, psychologist, psychiatrist, counselor, general therapist, general practitioner, so a GP, your family doctor. Have I said specialist in any area, an occupational therapist, all of these different areas in which you can have somebody who is trained in helping you in different areas. Next, you should look into, do you want somebody who has extensive training in trauma and dissociation? Do you want someone with specific training? Do you want someone who has written reports or books about DID or OSDD? Are you looking for somebody who is just prepared to learn and you don't care about their training, you only care that they are willing to meet you where you're at? Do you need your provider to have a specific gender or sexuality or race or other form of personal identity to help them provide the best care for you, so that you make sure that you can relate to them and they can relate to your experiences, or is that unimportant to you? How are you going to afford to see this professional? Do you have insurance? Is it funded where you live? Do you have savings? Is there somewhere that you could borrow money from, or someone else in your life who will pay for it? How frequently can you afford to go? Is this something that you want to only have access to start with, and then you want to go your own way? Is this something that you want regularly, once a week, multiple times a week, once a month? All of that sort of thing. There are many, many, many points to consider. And as I said, you should write this all down and work out what is most important to you. Highlight different things. And then once you have that list, try to find somebody who fits those specifications. This might not be easy, especially if you have a lot of specifics that you want to fill. So prioritize what is most important to you and start there, and then start to find people who might be slightly outside of your preferred goal, but who still meet your top priorities. And then once you do find someone, Just because you start seeing them doesn't mean you have to stay seeing them. You can do an introductory session or a few to get the feels of them, to work out how you work together in a working relationship. And if it doesn't feel right, you can change. You're not stuck with whoever you first pick. And you can also try different kinds of providers. If psychology isn't working, try psychiatry. If psychiatry isn't working, try OT. If OT isn't working, try your GP. All of these different things to build up a comprehensive care team around yourself. But why are we seeking a professional opinion? It doesn't even have to do with diagnosis. Whilst diagnosis can be really important to some individuals who realize they might be a system and they need a label for what is going on, for other people it's less of that and they just want help managing the symptoms. They want to learn coping skills. They want medication for insomnia. They just want somebody who they know they can go to if they're experiencing crisis, who can help them access safety and stabilization, either resources or coping tools. Work out why you want to see a professional. And again, there are a lot of barriers for reaching it, not just financial, not just availability. Sometimes there are internal barriers as well. Sometimes it might be very hard for you to access professional support because of bad past experiences. And that is all okay. And you should still try and find someone to work with because you deserve support. And whilst I say professional, peer support is part of this. Peer support groups are part of this. You deserve to not do it alone, and you deserve to have people who will help you to whatever their capacity and training allows. Tip number 4, be open. Now, I know this sounds kind of vague, but there are a couple of different things under this category and it will make sense in a moment, trust me. The first one is to be open to the fact that you might be a system. It can be very, very hard to accept you're not the only one living your life, and to realize that there are other parts, other alters, other identities who are taking executive control and having their say, especially if you are a host part, but that goes for other parts as well. Be open to that fact, be curious. Try to make yourself available to folks inside to introduce themselves. This might mean getting a specific DID journal or notebook for you to write in. It might mean getting an app like Simply Plural where you can track different parts and they can introduce themselves and message back and forth. It might involve having an email account that you email that is your own, and you email back and forth between your own email accounts information about yourselves. It might mean just noticing when you're in a moment and you start to feel that dissociation, you start to feel yourself fading in and out, and recognizing how your body feels, what sensations are going on, what thoughts are happening, if you can sense another presence, and just be open to that and be curious. It's hard. It's very hard, especially when you are meeting alters who are very unlike yourself for the first time. So if you're very chipper and happy and you're meeting a very depressed or trauma holder part, that can clash quite a bit, and it can be very hard to recognize and see and accept them. Same goes the other way. If you're a very strong, stoic, blunt protector part and you start to see these young child carefree parts who lack any inhibitions, it can feel very vulnerable to have them front and interact with people, so it can make sense to try and shut them away and push them away. But you have to try and be open, because that is the only way that you will really start to get an awareness of each other and to start building that collaboration and sense of community within the system. And that is probably a process that will take months, but more likely years to get to that point. But it all starts with you leaving an open notebook and saying, hello, this is who I am. If you are there, I would like to get to know you. Share anything you want about yourselves. Is there anything that I need to be aware of? Is there anything that I should stop doing? Is there anything I can do to make you more comfortable? And this is something that you can do to make me more comfortable. Anything like that. And the second thing in this category is to be open about being wrong about what's going on. You might think that you're a system. You might have strong suspicions that you think you're a system. You're missing time, you're dissociating, and you see online, in literature, in the media, in textbooks, whatever, that these symptoms align with dissociative identity disorder. So you start to explore this option. But whilst we're all the experts of our own lived experience, we can also be wrong about that experience, because by living our own lives and being in our own heads, we are inherently biased. It is okay to think that you have a disorder and later turn out to be incorrect, be that through further self-evaluation, be that through a competent and accurate diagnosis of something else. There are multiple different things that can mimic the symptoms of DID and OSDD. And that's why it's important to try and talk to a professional who understands dissociation, who understands systems, who can give you an accurate assessment of what's going on. Because realistically, different treatment options, different coping skills are going to be more beneficial for different disorders and different diagnoses. So if you have something and you're trying to treat it again and again and again and it's not working, it could be that something else is going on. So exploring other options, exploring different diagnoses could actually aid in a speedier and more comprehensive and safe and secure feeling recovery journey for yourself. Point number 5, do research. Research about the symptoms you are experiencing, whether that is dissociation. What does dissociation mean? What are its different types? How does it manifest? When does it go from being normal dissociation to disordered dissociation? Quotations around that because I don't necessarily agree with that language choice, but you understand what I mean. Research around altered states. What causes altered states? Is it only alters? Is it other things in play? What is depression? What are different symptoms of depression? Research the symptoms. And then also research specific disorders. Research PTSD, research CPTSD, research dissociative disorders, DID, OSDD, DPDR, dissociative amnesia, dissociative fugue, UDD. Research what those are, how they mean, how they present. And then research other disorders as well. Research developmental disorders, research personality disorders, research obsessive compulsive disorders, research psychotic disorders, research sleep disorders, research disorders that don't necessarily have to do with mental health. Like anything that is causing amnesia, that is causing memory loss, that is causing altered states, could also be a physical thing going on in your brain that might need medical intervention. And I could be wrong, but I'm fairly sure there are things like brain tumors or chemical imbalances or whatever that can cause amnesia and can cause all of those things, where that could be a fact that you need physical medical care for your physical body instead of mental health care for the organ that is your brain. And so research all those things, research all those different options. Also, I'm sorry that the light is getting dark. I didn't realize that I was filming so close to sunset, so I hope that you can still see me okay. The overhead light doesn't work, so you'll just have to bear with me. But what does research mean? It's very easy to say research, research, research. Comprehensive research is complex. You should be trying to read scholarly articles. You should be trying to read peer-reviewed articles. You should be trying to read books about these things. These can be harder to access because sometimes you have to pay money for them, so only do what you can afford to do. Look at websites like Sane Australia or didresearch.org. And then also listen to lived experience accounts, listen to YouTube accounts, listen to blogs, listen to podcasts, listen to Instagram accounts and TikTok accounts. Whilst I'm not going to be able to tell you have a disorder, whilst not all of them are actually educational, so you should use critical thinking when consuming this media, you're already watching currently a DID focused channel. And whilst I wouldn't call this formal research by watching these channels, you can still learn things. And there are things that I can say that I talk about from my lived experience that you might relate to. And just because you relate to an experience doesn't mean that you have the same diagnoses as we have, but it can still be a way to learn about your experiences and symptoms that you're having and compile all of this research. But going back to something I said earlier in point 1, if doing research on these themes, if doing research on these topics is causing you to dissociate, is causing an increase in behaviors that are causing you distress, stop, pause, regulate. Listen to the system, listen to your nervous system, listen to your body, and take it slow. You do not have to know everything immediately. You do not have to be an expert immediately. It is okay if it takes you 20 years to finally understand what the word dissociation means. There is no rush. This isn't a race. It is your life, and it is more important that you preserve your security and your safety over knowing things. It can still be uncomfortable to learn, and you should push through discomfort, and learning the difference between discomfort and danger is complex, especially if you have experienced chronic childhood trauma. So it's okay to be uncomfortable, but just be aware of when that discomfort tips into being actively dangerous and detrimental to yourself. Point number 6, upskill. So this focuses on learning skills, learning coping skills, learning grounding skills, all of that sort of thing. There are multiple different ways to access free learning skills online. There are DBT worksheets available. There are ACT worksheets available. There are videos about breathing exercises. There's videos about bilateral tapping and bilateral stimulation. There are these things that you can access for free to start to practice bringing in coping skills into your daily life. And this isn't just learning them. Learning them is all well and good, but you need to practice. And you need to practice not just when you're distressed. If you are only practicing coping skills when you're distressed, your brain will build an association between the coping skill and being distressed, and you won't want to engage with it. We have on our belt, let me show you, this little rabbit. This is a physical representation of our safe space. We spent time sitting down at home when we felt safe and secure, holding this rabbit, focusing on safe visual imagery, focusing on fostering a safe feeling inside, and recognizing that we are safe and okay, and practiced feeling safe when holding this rabbit. And that has meant that when we are in public and we need to try and tell our brain that we're safe, because just because we're triggered doesn't mean we're in danger, we can hold on to this rabbit that's attached to our belt. And we've practiced the skill enough times that it is easier, not easy, but easier for us to recall how to do safe place imagery, to foster that feeling of safety, to ground ourselves and to soothe ourselves. And that wouldn't have been possible if we just chucked this on our keychain and tried to hold on to it whenever we felt triggered. If we did that, we'd associate this with triggers. But we gave it positive associations first. And that goes for all of your different coping skills. And not every coping skill that you try to learn, not every grounding skill that you try to learn, not every mindfulness skill that you try to learn is going to work for you. Sometimes they don't work to start with, and you'll find they work months or years down the line. Sometimes they're never going to work for you. We have coping skills that are never going to work for us because we just don't vibe with them, they trigger us, we find them annoying, and that's okay. We find other coping skills that are, and we keep a list of them. DID, OSDD, being a system, you're going to have memory issues. When you find a coping skill that works, keep track of it. And then you can refer back to that list when you are triggered, when you are distressed, when you are dissociated, to help you ground. We actually have a video about different grounding skills, so that is something you want to look into. That should be somewhere above me, and you can click on that for a starting point. The other thing that you should be trying to do is journaling, and journaling consistently. That might mean morning and night, that might mean every Sunday, that might mean at the start of every week, and it doesn't have to be structured. It can be responding to prompts, it might just be writing things that you want to do, it can be anything. Junk journaling, scrapbooking, video journaling, making memes about what's going on in your life, having things like fake Twitter accounts or private Twitter accounts or private TikTok accounts where you make trends and stuff, and then build that communication between parts, talk to yourself, process the stuff. We find video journaling the most helpful, but we also keep a written journal. We have our actual journal where we just write anything down, whether it's notes about the Minecraft world we're building in, whether it's trauma rants, whether it's us musing on who we are as a part because we're dissociated. We also have our therapy specific notebook where we write notes before session and then after session so that we don't forget what we've talked about. We also have a DID specific journal that has a bunch of prompts and sections to fill out that is specific to DID and OSDD and is specifically related to symptoms we experience. We also have an art journal where people draw in it and just draw whatever they want, be that traumatic imagery and trauma artwork or just fun little artworks. It's all of these different things. Some systems find it easier to have a journal for each specific part. Others have a journal for different purposes. Some people like us have one main journal where they keep everything in it and then side journals for very specific things. Some people only have one journal. Do however it works for you. But practice that skill, practice that journaling, because that journaling is going to be one of the best ways that you can help build communication between different parts if it turns out that you are a system. And even if you aren't, journaling is helpful for people anyway. So there's no harm in learning these skills, there's no harm in practicing journaling, because you will probably benefit it from the long run, whether it works out you're a system or not. I'm sorry if the angle has changed, my phone ran out of space, but let's finish this up with the final point. Number 7, connect with others. It can be very, very easy to fall into the trap of self-isolating when you discover that you have a complex mental health condition, especially one rooted in trauma and potentially even abuse. It can be very hard to trust others. It can also feel very hard to be open about it and to be afraid of backlash because of the stigma around mental health conditions, especially ones like DID and OSDD. With all of that said, you should still try to be connecting with other people. You don't have to tell them everything that's going on, but if you do have someone that you feel safe enough to do so with and you have that kind of relationship with them, you should confide in them because you deserve connection. But also just connect with people. Go out and have coffee with a friend. Go visit your mother in the afternoon and cook dinner together. Help your neighbor out in the garden. Go to the grocery store with a different friend. Do things that make you feel connected to others. That might mean going out in the evening and having dinner at a restaurant, or going out at night and partying at a club. It might mean studying together, or going to the library together, or watching a film together, eating together, cooking together. Anything that makes you feel connected to others. If you can't access things in person, sending your loved ones memes or video messages or voice messages or typing, even writing letters to them if you like snail mail, drawing them pictures, having a collaborative art project that you're working on together. Just connect with the ones that you love still. And then also try and find community. Find community with other trauma survivors, find community with other systems. I can't recommend specific communities because realistically, a lot of online communities will have infighting, will have controversy, especially when you have a bunch of traumatized people, not all of whom know how to regulate their emotions because they're chronically traumatized. And that's not a negative statement towards them, it's just a fact of truth. You're going to have a lot of infighting, and that can be unpleasant to be around. We've also found at the same time so much importance from connecting with other systems. We've been part of Facebook groups, Discord servers, in-person groups, and then we have like our community as well from the content that we make, and all of those have been really important to ourselves. We just wouldn't necessarily recommend any of them because it's about you finding a community that resonates with you. And community, especially around mental health conditions, can help you understand yourself more. People can share experiences and you can reflect and go, oh my God, yes, that's what I'm experiencing. Whether or not it's caused by the same condition, you can still have overlaps in symptoms and experiences. And just try to find people so that you don't feel alone, because it can feel really isolating to discover that you have a dissociative disorder, but I promise you, you are not alone. There are millions of other people out there with similar stories to your own, and you are never truly alone. Even if you've never heard someone talk about the experiences you've gone through, I can almost guarantee you somebody else has, and they're probably feeling just as alone. And just because you might not cross paths and you might not talk to each other doesn't mean that you are truly alone. And even if people don't have the exact same experiences as you, their similar experiences can still help you feel less alone. And I really genuinely hope that you do not feel alone, because you are not alone in this. And not because there might be other people in your head, not because you might be a system, but because truly there are other physical, whole people, not as in whole as in healed, but like whole collective consciousnesses, whole systems, whole singlets, whole people who are going to be there and support you through all of this if you let them. And with all of that said, those are our 7 big pieces of advice to anyone suspecting that they might be a system. We hope this video is helpful. If you would like a similar video on our tips for newly discovered systems, specifically on how to actually navigate early systemhood, please let us know and we can make that as well. This has been an absolute pleasure to put together for you all. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.